Ignorance and misunderstanding. Dogs are one of the few things in life that almost everyone thinks they're an expert in. The reality is, dogs are widely misunderstood even by dog professionals. A simple misunderstanding can lead to a rift in a relationship we value so much. Okay, here we go. I have permission to share this story, so I want you to know that first. Before I trained dogs full time, there was this kind of interim period while I was building Tulsa Pack, but I was phasing out of being a practice manager at this animal hospital. I was still helping them with payroll and inventory and some things that the veterinarian just really couldn't do. So I had time. And before I did this, I've spent many years helping people in recovery, but mostly just sponsoring people. So in that period of time, I met a family. I met a man that I was just in recovery with. And through the course of that time, he would bring his daughter to meetings. And I noticed that she was adopted. And I know him and his wife. And I knew that she was adopted because they're both white. And she is very, very dark-skinned, the most beautiful skin. She's a black woman. And so, that time she was a child. And so I recognized this and I took an interest in her because I wanted her to know that I had a family like that too. And she was very close with her parents. So it just, the relationship evolved over the years. And the first time I met Grace, I believe she was about 6 years old. So fast forward 10 years, and I'm at this time period of my life that I just told you about. And her father has his wife reach out to me. I think initially maybe they both did, and then I ended up talking more to his wife, who is a physician. And I believe that the father, I'm not sure why I always assumed he worked in some sort of social work capacity, but I always have, and I don't know that that's accurate. But they reached out to me to ask if I would life coach their daughter. And I thought, like a 16-year-old? Is she an alcoholic? No. She's just struggling and we don't know what to do. And we thought maybe someone who had a life like her would be able to help her. And they had the means financially to be able to pay me where it was not a burden to them. And so they offered to pay me and I accepted. And I became Grace's life coach. And so the first thing I did was, much like I do with people in their other sentient beings they're in relationships with dogs, I asked some things in the beginning about, where did this all start going off the rails? I think that's I've said enough when I say that. Like, where did this start going where you felt like you didn't know what you were doing? And her mom told me a story, and that has stuck with me all these years, and I think of it all the time. And I think of her mom, and I think of the look on her face when I said what I said to her. I think of the validation in Grace's face when I said what I said. I can see the pain in her father's eyes that they had misjudged and misunderstood what was going on with her. I could see regret, probably shame, and what many people would describe, and I'm not a clinician, but I'm a really intelligent woman, and what I would describe is, I think most people would describe as borderline personality disorder in Grace. I know that because of the relationship she developed with me and the way she tried to have a relationship with me. It was incredibly toxic. Even though she deeply loves me and I deeply love her, I could just tell there was something not right. And I knew it wasn't maliciousness or neglect or abuse. I knew it wasn't any of those things. And she shared with me that her parents were loving to her. They were accepting of her gender, or of her sexuality. They were accepting of the way that she felt she was a part of the LGBTQ community. They're Catholic, and they were still very accepting of that. So it wasn't anything on the surface like that. You know, normally when people struggle, they feel unseen or unheard or unloved. And I don't think, as far as she communicated to me, that she felt any of that. So what is it? Why were my parents so successful and you guys are struggling? What's the difference? What's the same? What's different? Well, I noticed very quickly that some of the things that were the same about Grace and I were that she seemed very, her body was very like athletic. Like she just, you know, she's tall with these long legs, like tall, like 5'9", long legs, looks like a volleyball player. And she'd wear these long braids, and her mom would always like whatever she wanted. You know, her hair was always braided real cool and just, okay, so does she feel like she can't express her culture? She feel like she didn't? No, it's not that. I asked her. No. So we went back. And I asked her mom to describe to me, when was the first time that you decided that you guys needed to put her on medication? This is a child that's been on medication for ADHD since she was 6 years old. And she told me a story, and the story that she told me was what I held on to and what I try to communicate to people about how critical, how crucial maybe it is to understand who you're dealing with from their lens, not yours. Because your lens is your lens, and it's not their lens. And if you paint it from your lens, you're about to fuck a motherfucker up. Because that's, especially if you're painting a pit bull the lens of a golden retriever, which many of us do. Okay, so I asked her mom, I said, tell me, what was it? What was the moment when she was a child that you were like, this is not, and her mom's a physician, so I felt like we could have conversations that were a little bit beyond just basic surface language about that. And she's also a very empathetic woman. She's very easy to talk to. And she said, well, when Grace was younger, I had an office inside of Wesley Hospital, which is the big like trauma one center here in Wichita. And there's a beautiful neighborhood around it called College Hill, and there's old, beautiful houses there. And she said we lived in one of these houses. And so sometimes when I would work, we would walk to my office, me and the kids. And I was like, that sounds lovely. And she's like, yeah. She goes, well, this, right before we put Grace on medication, we took one of those walks, and Grace cartwheeled the entire way from our door all the way to the front door of the hospital. And I was like, fucking awesome. And she was like, and she didn't say, she just looked at me. And I was like, what happened? Did she keep doing it when she was inside? And she was like, no. And I go, I don't understand why you're telling this part of the story. You know, because at this point and she's like, it was just a lot. And okay, what happened before that? She told me a couple other little incidents. To me, they all seemed like really innocuous because I'm an athlete. And I have raised an athlete. And I was raised by an athlete. And there's something, just like every person has a set of needs, I think that some people have a specific set of needs in the department, in that department. Let's just say it. Let's just paint a broad stroke here, in that department. I asked some more follow-up questions, and then I talked to Grace about that. And I asked her to explain her experience to me as a child and what it was like for her. And if she felt like her needs were fulfilled in that way in terms of like what she kind of needed physically. And she explained to me that they were not. That she had long wanted to play sports, and it was just always a thing. There was always a reason kind of why she couldn't. I don't recall right now what they were, but they were always kind of it just wasn't something that jived with what her family wanted to do, because she did not get adopted into a family of athletes. She got adopted into a really loving, caring family that does a lot of good in the community. But personally, they were a complete mismatch for her in that area. In other areas, they were great for her, but they misunderstood this critical thing about her because they were painting their lens onto her. And they have a much more sedentary lifestyle. They're a bit studious. They like to read a lot. They like to sit and talk and debate and have conversation and be social. But it's generally around a more sedentary lifestyle. And so I think what happens is you're modeling things for your children, and when they're doing stuff that's outside the norm of what you perceive to be what they should be doing or what's normal, it becomes problem behavior. When in reality, they're just having the behavior of a child, most likely. Or, now we're going to jump over, as I think you get it, when they're just being a dog. Dogs bark, they bite, they lunge, they run, they pace, they dig, they eat poop, they lick their butts, they do all kinds of things that are absolutely normal for a dog to do. I've never seen a dog do anything that was not dog-like. I've yet to see one. I mean, I've seen a couple driving a car, but that was like Photoshop or like AI. I feel like the Golden Retriever was actually steering. But you know what I'm saying? Like, in all these years, all these tens of thousands of years, dogs are only capable of doing what they're doing. They have not evolved to do anything else. And so if we look at it from that lens, and we just have behaviors that are desirable and undesirable, because they're not doing the behavior of a donkey. They're not doing wrong dog behavior. They're just doing dog behavior. It's our job to help them not do undesirable behaviors and to do desirable behaviors. If you misunderstand what you're seeing in front of you, it's one thing to do it a little bit and you just make some mistakes, because you're going to do that in the course of a relationship. But when you do it over the totality of the relationship and you never fix core things that are really necessary, the relationship will suffer. It will. This is known, right? The relationship will suffer. So what happened to Grace? Well, Grace and I started talking, and Grace and I started picking apart why kids think things are fucking cool and why they're this and why they're that. I'm very in touch with that part of myself. I taught her how to journal, and I told her parents to get her into volleyball. I told her parents to take the door off of the hinges because she was harming herself. And that's just how it goes. I mean, I can't tell you how many doors have been taken off the hinges, how many shoestrings, how many drawstrings of pants have been taken away from me. Everything. I couldn't have razors. I couldn't have... Like, people are in a way. Dogs are in a way. Like, we're not the only ones that loop behavior because we don't know what else to do. We're not the only ones that are destructive to those around us. This is like a interspecies thing. It's not like dogs left to their own devices would figure it out. Like, not in the world we live in now because there's too many of them, but had it not evolved the way that it did, they would have just, whatever. But like, we're involved in when we misunderstand what we're dealing with, or we straight up just don't know, it turns your dog into something that it's actually not, and you'll look at it from the lens of problem behaviors. For example, how many people watching had no idea what arousal was before they heard me say the word? Literally everyone, because I didn't know what it was before. I mean, I knew because of vet med, but I didn't understand the implications on behavior the way that I understand them now. How many people know that your dog does not have a super advanced prefrontal cortex capable of higher reasoning like we do? Right. How many people know that your dog, because they lack that fancy pantsy in the brainy, they're operating off of a much more primitive limbic system? We have the same limbic system. We have the same nervous system. It's the same exact thing, but we got the fancy pantsy. Okay, the fancy pantsy also makes us, right? We got to do like breath work and shit because we're so disconnected. We don't even know what's going on. They have all of that stuff, but we don't think about it like that, right? We think about it like, you're my dog. And then we paint our dog with the lens of us, because we perceive generally, whether we know it or not, that our dog is really kind of like a possession. I mean, a lot of people, their dog's not getting their basic needs met. And I'm not talking about the people in the inner city. I'm talking about me and you. Their dog hasn't been on a nature walk. Their dog hasn't rolled in mud or been yelled at for eating poop they're not supposed to be eating, or rolling in poop they're not supposed to be. They haven't had to be wrestled out of a pond by their mama. And that's fun. They haven't climbed up on a big rock. They haven't scraped their belly and had to limp back to the car. Like, dogs like to be fucking dogs. Last night I was like, are you coming with me or not on this bike ride? Because this is 2 nights in a row now, and I feel like your foot's better enough. You can come. And he didn't want to come. And then he did. Right as I was pulling away, I heard the scratch of, oh! So I got him. And that motherfucker limped around for a block. Bro, you want to go back? Are you okay? Because he's a dog. He's not a human being. Dogs do not have the capacity for self-pity. It's my favorite thing about them. We are the ones that paint these stories on them and then live under them. And we attach that as a part of ourself, and it becomes this, and it misses the whole point of championing the dog for who they really are and highlighting them and highlighting your relationship. But if you don't really know them, and you only know them from what you perceive or what you learned about dogs growing up because you had a dog, that would be like, actually, that's not a good example. People actually do that. It's a very narrow lens. It's a narrow lens. And as we get older and we become adults, we realize that we need a broader lens and multiple perspectives to really understand something. And so I would encourage you to drop the lens of your childhood, of what you may perceive about dogs when you grew up. There may be some really good stuff in there, right? You may have had parents that knew a lot about dogs or something like that. So definitely keep all that stuff. So Grace quickly got off her medicine, and by quickly I mean in an appropriate amount of time and overseen by a doctor. She's not taken any in all these years since. She got into volleyball. She got some friends. She got a couple friends. She went on, and it was consented and it was informed consent. She chose to go on a teen challenge camp in the wilderness in Vancouver, and she went for a month, and she had to live out in a tent in, like, on the Pacific Northwest Trail I shouldn't say Vancouver. It was definitely on the Pacific Northwest Trail. And she wrote a journal this big to me, and she cried every single day. And when she came out, she was like, I had no idea I could fucking do that. I was like, bitch, you bad. I did. I did. I knew. And it was like 6 random other teenagers, that were like doing drugs and doing whatever. They're all there together. And she just needed a lot more challenge. She needed consistency. She needed to develop her own hobbies and have those supported. All things that her parents were capable of doing. They just didn't know. They were misunderstanding some things. They were ignorant to some things, and now they're not. And Grace graduated from high school, and I went, and she looked beautiful. And we're still friends to this day. And she's doing great. And she has a dog named Biscuit, FYI. But I think about her often. And I think about how easy it is to just look at something that you don't quite get and to think that it needs to be made into what that next thing looks like or what that next thing looks like. When in reality, there's a whole unique individual in there. And that's true with your dogs. I want to talk to you a little bit about tools because I said today we were going to have a bonus conversation about tools. And so what I want that to look like is this. We're all going to parent in a different way. And what we do when we're a parent in our 20s is different than what we do when we're 30. Because we've grown and we've learned, and hopefully we've learned some things along the way that are better parenting. So wherever you're at right now with tools, that's fine. If you use an e-collar sometimes, if you use a prong collar, if you whatever, it's not the way that I do it because I'm a parent in my 40s now. So I've learned a lot of stuff, and I'm really dedicated to learning things about parenting, right? So I put all of this effort into it. And that's not very realistic for the next person, right? That maybe parenting isn't their side interest. Maybe dogs aren't their side interest. They're just like, they just have a dog or whatever. Okay? So wherever you're at, it's fine. You have to find a teacher who has what you want. So I found Denise, and I was like, wow. I don't like sports stuff. I have other hobbies, and that it would take too much time to do sports stuff. And I like to do horses and goats and stuff like that. So for me, I just want to make sure that I have a really good handle on knowing dogs. And so Denise was a really great mentor for me because she teaches about all these different things. She has all of these, just so many resources. And so it was cool for me because we didn't have to have a conversation about tools. When I came across a question, I would ask her. And we would have conversations like, what is aversive and what is not, and who decides. And we both agree that the dog decides what's aversive. But if you're using a martingale or a flat collar or a front clip harness or a back clip harness or a flexi, or it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter the way that I teach because I teach from the ground up, not having to rely on the lead other than for redirection and management for safety. Because I want you to be able to teach your dogs things that you want to see instead of using a leash to keep them from what you don't want them doing. Sometimes we have to do that, and that's okay. But to do it as a total style is reckless for me, and I just don't care to do that. I make a lot of mistakes in life. I drop stuff, I forget stuff, I just kind of need to know that my dog has an understanding of what's expected, even when I'm not on point all the time, because I just know how I am. Another person may tell you something different. I have trainers here who probably identify that's not probably true anymore. Most of the trainers here are Lima trainers But that doesn't mean that Lima trainers still can use tools. It just means that they're using it very thoughtfully, and they're going through the humane hierarchy, and they're really thinking about what they're doing and consulting another trainer if they feel like, they're unsure about their decision about adding an aversive tool, which would be very few and far between. But we're not going to be like, no, we never do that, and that's abusive, and we never, because every person is unique and individual and deserves to have their story heard as to why they're making the decisions that they're making. So some people come to me on those tools. They generally don't leave on them. If somebody wants to use like an e-collar for long-range recall or something like that, they can go see one of the trainers that knows how to do that. I just don't use them. I've never used an e-collar or held one or anything like that. It's a personal thing with me. It's not because I think that they are inherently abusive. I do not believe that. I think they, like anything, can be used improperly, and they're sold over the counter. So, all the fights that Zach George wants to have, he needs to start having with the manufacturers and the distributors of those products if he doesn't want them used. Because you could ban every single dog trainer. You could get rid of every single dog trainer. They're still selling those motherfucking things in the store. So it just doesn't really make sense to, to approach it from that way. So I know you guys probably see me talk a lot about, and I seem to be arguing sometimes with Zach, and I get into advocacy talk about this. But at the end of the day, I just don't give a shit. I just don't care. I'm just glad that people are here. I'm glad that they want to help their dog, and they're going to find their way. You're going to find your way if you keep trying. And other people's opinions about what you're doing are nothing more than a distraction unless they know you closely and personally, and they have reason to be saying this to you, right? So they know all of the information. Otherwise, you just have to not listen to those people. And what I do is I just go, mm-hmm. And then I just walk off and continue doing whatever I was doing in the first place. So that's my bonus talk on tools. But this is a great place to come and learn at Tulsa Pack if you are wanting to understand our approach, which is emotions, nervous system, behavior. It is not doing all these things and making your dog do. If you do all this stuff that we're doing, your dog's personality and who they really are and what they really may benefit from will rise to the top, and you'll be able to see like, wow, we'd really be good at rally. We'd really be good at fly ball. Bitch, get over here, let's do fly ball. You know what, could we do a herding class? I think we should. But if your dog can't even go on a basic walk, do you really know each other that well? Or do you just think that you know your dog? It's okay. It's okay to entertain it for a second. It doesn't mean that you're a bad person. It doesn't mean anything. It just means I gotta make sure that I'm truly seeing my dog for who they are, which is a dog and not a person. You get it? Okay, let's see if we can get this here potato up and show you some leash stuff. All right, first thing we need to know is that I'm using a 10-foot slip lead. Oh, we're not in frame. I like it because it gives you a little bit of extra length from the 6-foot, but it's not like long and cumbersome like the long line. And I don't like flexies, but I think flexies are cool. I just don't like them. I think it's cool when people use them. I just prefer a drag line, so I'll just let this drag on the ground a lot of times. Okay, the first thing we're going to work on is this. So we've been working on our ready catch. We're going to pair that, here we go, with a little back pedal and a cue. My cue, oh, I'm yelling. I'm sorry, I forgot I have my mic on. My cue is here we go. Here we go. We're going to back pedal it to a scatter. Now we're using, remember how we talked about movement and how that helps, that's a June bug, and how that helps channel arousal. Here we go. So that's my cue. I can bump the leash lightly if he's not coming with me, you little gimpy. And that time I chose to just give it to him straight from my hand. Here we go. So that's our back pedal. We can even end that with this. It doesn't matter. You're using it as a tool for redirection so that you can get engagement back. Okay, you can also use the back pedal to get the fuck out of Dodge if you need to make some distance, right? Here we go. Come on, sweetie. He's slow poking. Find it. Just like that. This is going to help you when you go mobile on the walk. Come on, sweetheart. We got one more thing that we're going to work on. And that's a side shuffle. And I like this one because a lot of times when you're backpedaling, you can only do it for so long, like safely. You know what I'm saying? You might like hit a pole, or one time I almost went into the river, and that was traumatizing. Like literally just one more step and I would have been in dirty Arkansas. So I developed a side shuffle so you can see where you're going. But this is still exciting. This is still movement. Don't forget your cue, whatever you want that to be. Here we go. Good boy. Find it. So why are we doing that? What happens is you guys will be walking with your dog and your dog will see a dog or you'll see a dog or whatever. And pretty soon it's this. You plant your feet, you get ready for your dog to lunge, and then you basically just become a tree for your dog to lunge because they have leverage, okay? When you, and I'm going to circle back around now to something that I said before, but this was in I think this was in East Coast group, to Mal, maybe? You were like trying to redirect, and I said the back pedal is a statement, not a question. It's a statement. Here we go. I'm not stopping. I'm not asking you to come with me. We're going. And I didn't have to like drag him or do anything outrageous on the lead. I didn't have to do anything like that. I'm so sorry that I wasn't prepared. But I said what we were doing and I went. Okay? Here we go. And I just lightly boop boop on the leash to get him to come with me. Good boy. Ready catch. Very good. So that's all we're doing today. It's pretty simple. You got your back pedal and your side shuffle. You can combine those to go to a scatter. You can combine them to go to your hand. You can, after the scatter, throw a ready catch. All these things are designed so that you stay interesting and engaging with your dog. Now, what do I not want to see? It's weird to be out with your friend and they stare at you the whole time. You see what I'm saying? People are like, well, they're not engaging with me. And I'm like, they're fine. They're engaging with you sometimes. And then they're looking out in the environment. And then they're looking at you. That's normal. That's how you would normally conversate or have a relationship. You guys wouldn't be like, I mean, I guess if you were doing like Argentine tango or something, that would be cool. But just out being friends, think about it much more like a friendship that you have with someone else. And what makes that fun when you guys are out? Is it because the person's really engaging and funny? Is it because they take you interesting places or you go interesting places? And try to nurture those sides and concepts of your relationship with your dog.